It started on a regular Wednesday afternoon when I decided to take a break from work and go through some old family photos. I was trying to organize a few things when I found an envelope tucked away in the drawer. The handwriting on it was unfamiliar, and my heart skipped a beat as I opened it. Inside were pictures, photos of my wife, Sarah, and another man, captured in moments that no husband should ever have to witness. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There they were, laughing together at a secluded beach, holding hands in what looked like an intimate, private moment. The man, someone I'd never met before, seemed to be more than just a friend. The shock hit me hard. These were no accidental photos. They were taken on weekends, when she told me she was working late or out with friends. My mind raced. The more I looked at the pictures, the more I felt my blood boiling. Sarah, the woman I had trusted for years, had been hiding a dark secret from me. I was crushed, betrayed, but the anger soon overshadowed the pain. I knew then that I had to get revenge. It was the only thing that could give me any sense of justice. I couldn't think straight for hours. My mind was a whirlpool of rage and hurt. But one thing was clear: I couldn't just let this go. I had to make her understand the consequences of her actions. The question was, how? I didn't want to confront her directly. Not yet. I needed proof. Something undeniable that would shatter her world the way she had shattered mine. I began to follow her more closely, keeping tabs on her movements. It was hard, but every time I saw her smile or kiss me goodbye in the morning, it felt like a lie. I couldn't trust her anymore. The pieces began to fall into place when I overheard her on the phone one evening. Her voice was low, almost too quiet, but I could hear enough to recognize that she was talking to him, the man from the pictures. They were planning their next meeting, talking about the weekend getaway. My heart stopped. It was all real. There was no denying it now. I knew I had to make my move, slowly, carefully. I began planting little clues, things that would make her nervous, like rearranging her things and leaving small notes where she would find them. I wanted to make sure she was fully aware that I knew what she had been up to. The moment of confrontation would come, but first I needed to see her squirm. It was a Friday evening when I decided it was finally time. Sarah had been acting strangely for days, nervous, distracted, and on edge. I had watched her through hidden cameras again and saw how she would get texts, always quickly hiding her phone when I walked into the room. The guilt was written all over her face, and I could see the cracks in her once perfect mask. She thought I hadn't noticed, but I had. That evening, I set the stage. I made sure to leave the photos in plain sight on the kitchen table, carefully placed so she would see them as soon as she entered. The doorbell rang, and I knew it was her. The tension in the air thickened. My heart was racing, but I stood firm, determined to face this betrayal head on. When Sarah walked in, her eyes immediately fell on the photos. I watched her face drain of color. For a moment, she was frozen, and I could see her mind racing, trying to think of an explanation. But there was nothing she could say. The proof was right in front of her. I didn't say anything at first. I just watched her, waiting. She looked at me, then back at the photos, and her voice cracked when she finally spoke. "How did you really thought I wouldn't find out?" I cut her off. my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside. You thought I wouldn't notice? All the lies? All the secrets? Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't going to let her guilt trip me. I had been the one lied to, betrayed. She opened her mouth to say something, but I stopped her again. Don't. I don't need any more excuses. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it, I said coldly. But I'm not done. Not yet. You will pay for this. I'm not going to let you off so easily. I thought I had prepared myself for the pain of it all. But when Sarah broke down in front of me, something inside me twisted. She sobbed uncontrollably, begging me to listen, to understand that it wasn't what I thought. But I knew better. I had all the evidence. It didn't matter how many tears she shed. It wasn't going to undo what she had done. What's the point of apologizing now, Sarah? You've already made your choice, I said, my voice calm but cutting. You've ruined everything we had. Her sobs turned into desperate cries. Please don't do this. I love you. I never meant for this to happen. It just happened. And I'm sorry. I don't want to lose you. I stood up, walking toward her. For a moment, I almost felt sympathy for her. The woman I loved, the woman I had built a life with, was now a shell of herself, broken and remorseful. But I pushed the feeling aside. The betrayal was too deep. Love? After all this, you're still going to say you love me? I asked, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You really think I'm going to believe that? You've shattered everything, and I'm not just going to forgive you because you feel bad. I walked away from her, taking a deep breath to control the rising anger in my chest. As I did, I noticed something strange, something that completely changed the game. There, in the corner of the living room, on the shelf where I kept some old books, was a brand new envelope. It was sealed, but the handwriting on it looked familiar. My own. Confused, I grabbed it and opened it without thinking. Inside was a letter, but it wasn't for me. It was from the man she'd been cheating with, the one in the photos. He had written me a letter, and it wasn't what I expected at all. It was a confession. I've been seeing your wife for the past year, and I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, the letter began. But I can't hide this anymore. The truth is, she's been hiding a secret from you. A secret that's far worse than you can imagine. I stood frozen, the letter trembling in my hand. My mind was already reeling from the betrayal. But this was something entirely different. I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread as I read on. The truth, the letter continued, is that Sarah and I weren't just having an affair. There's more. She's been hiding something even darker from you. I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but it's time you knew. Your wife is deeply involved with dangerous people, and I've been trying to protect her from the consequences of her actions. My blood ran cold. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Sarah, my sweet, innocent wife, was involved in something far beyond a simple affair. I needed to understand what this meant. Who were these dangerous people? And why hadn't she told me about it? The letter went on, explaining how Sarah had gotten mixed up in a financial scheme. A deal that involved laundering money for a group of criminals. The man in the photos, the one she'd been so close to, wasn't just a lover. He was a key player in the operation. Someone who had been using her without her realizing the full extent of the danger she was in. I felt a wave of anger mixed with disbelief. I had been betrayed, not just emotionally, but in a way that could destroy everything I had worked for. Our family, our home, all of it was at risk because of her lies. I immediately went to confront her again. This time, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I wasn't just going to let her explain her way out of it with more tears and more empty apologies. This was bigger than I thought, and I was going to make sure I had control of the situation. When I walked back into the living room, Sarah was sitting on the couch, still crying. She looked up when I entered, her eyes red from the tears. But I didn't say anything. I simply threw the letter down in front of her. "Care to explain this?" I asked coldly. Her eyes widened when she saw the letter. The color drained from her face and her hands began to shake. For the first time, I saw true fear in her eyes. "How did you find it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I found it in my own home," I replied, my voice full of disdain. "And now you're going to tell me everything, all of it." For a moment, there was silence. Sarah's eyes were filled with panic as she stared at the letter, then at me. Her lips quivered as if she were going to say something, but no words came out. I could see the weight of her secrets pressing down on her, and in that moment, I knew she couldn't keep lying anymore. "Please," she finally whispered, her voice shaky. "I never meant for any of this to happen." She paused, taking a deep breath as if gathering her strength. "It started so innocently. At first I thought it was just harmless. I was lonely, and the attention he gave me, it felt so good, so validating. But then things escalated. I was drawn in deeper, and I couldn't stop myself. I thought I could control it, keep it secret. But I couldn't." Her confession hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt disgusted, betrayed, not just because of the affair, but because of the way she had manipulated me. How she had been lying to my face while hiding something so much more sinister. "And the dangerous people?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's that about, Sarah? Who are they, and why the hell didn't you tell me?" She looked down at her hands, her shoulders trembling. "I never wanted you to know. I was trying to protect you. Protect us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The money laundering, it started as just a favor. They promised it was small, that it wouldn't hurt anyone. But then they pulled me in deeper, and I had no way out. I didn't want to involve you. I didn't want to drag you into it." My mind was spinning. How had I been so blind? For years, she had been playing this game, manipulating me, using me as a cover for her own dark world. I had trusted her, loved her, and all this time, she had been living a lie. I could barely control my fury. "So, what now? You expect me to just forgive you? Pretend like everything's fine?" I shot back, the bitterness in my voice cutting through the air. She shook her head slowly. "No, I don't expect forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But please, I need your help. They know about you now. And if you don't protect us, if you don't take control of this, they'll come after us. After you. They're dangerous." My hands clenched into fists. The woman I loved had dragged me into a nightmare of crime and deceit. The stakes were higher now, far higher than I could have ever imagined. "I don't know if I can help you, Sarah," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and confusion. "You've already destroyed everything. but I'll think about it. I have to, for the sake of our family. I turned away, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge and justice. But this was no longer just about betrayal. It was about survival. The days that followed were a blur of planning decisions and betrayal. I spent hours researching the people Sarah had been involved with. Her supposed innocent mistake had plunged us into a world I never imagined. The criminals she was tangled up with were no small-time players. They were ruthless, and they wouldn't hesitate to ruin everything we had left. The more I learned, the more I realized just how deep Sarah's lies ran. She had made her choices, but now it was my turn to make mine. I had been hurt, humiliated, and betrayed in the worst way possible. But the one thing I still had was control of the situation. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She had taken everything from me, and now I was going to make sure she paid for it. I waited for the perfect moment, the moment when she thought everything was going to go back to normal. That's when I would strike. I spent days setting everything up, preparing my plan, knowing exactly what I had to do. One night, after a long and tense dinner, I finally put my plan into motion. I had arranged for the man Sarah had been involved with to show up at our house, and I knew she would be there too. I wanted her to witness it all. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done, the hurt, the betrayal, the consequences of her actions. As Sarah opened the door to find him standing there, I couldn't help but smile coldly. Her face went pale as she saw him, her breath catching in her throat. "You think I didn't know? You thought you could keep me in the dark forever?" I said, my voice steady and filled with the satisfaction of knowing I had won. She looked between the man and me, her eyes wide with fear and disbelief. "No, I never meant for it to go this far," she stammered. But I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. It was too late for that. "I've made sure your little secret is out," I continued, my eyes narrowing. "This is the last time you will ever play me like that." Before she could say another word, I turned to the man who had been standing quietly in the doorway, watching everything unfold. "I've made arrangements. It's over for you both," I told him. "You wanted to ruin my life? Well, now you'll regret it." I walked away, leaving Sarah to face the consequences of her actions. Her world, her carefully built lies, was crumbling. And I didn't feel bad about it, not even for a second. I had given her every chance to come clean, every chance to fix this, but she chose to betray me. Now it was time for her to face the truth, to live with the fact that her choices had consequences. As I walked out into the night, the weight on my chest finaled.